thought it was over. But to quote Michael Corleone, every time you think it's done, they drag it back in. That's a paraphrase, of course. But it was announced, of course, last week that it was done. Netflix had officially won the bidding war to buy Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers had asked everybody to send in their final big bids. They set them all in. Netflix had the biggest bid. They went with Netflix and said, we are now entering into an exclusive negotiating window with Netflix. And of course, it's going to take about a year for the deal to get done. But hold the phone. It ain't over till it's over. Because Paramount, according to the story in CNBC, Paramount Skydance is launching a hostile bid to try to win over WBD, quoting, of course, Kylo Ren, to finish what you started. To finish what he started. CEO Ellison said, continuing to sound like a petulant 7-year-old child. And I say that as someone who kind of likes David Ellison. It is what it is. All right. First thing we got to address here before we get into the details of what this hostile bid takeover would look like is I had some people in the live chat understandably asking, what exactly is a hostile bid? All right. Basically speaking, the normal process is you approach the board. You say, we want to buy you. The board approves, that you want to buy them, then goes to the shareholders for a vote and an approval. And then you go ahead and do it. But what happens if the board doesn't want to sell it to you? What you can do is try to then acquire enough shares from the shareholders that you then own at least 50% plus one of the shares. And if you own more than 50% of the shares, you can just vote in a new board of directors that will approve your bid to buy it. You get to put in, because it's the shareholders who vote in the board of directors. So you buy enough shares, you get to name who the board is, and you put on the board people who are going to vote yes for your bid. That's basically a hostile take. There's other, like I'm oversimplifying, that's basically it. So what's happened here is that David Ellison and Skydance are now directly appealing to the shareholders and saying, listen, the management board, the board of governors have said no to us, but we think you, the shareholder, should say yes. And they're going directly at them to try to get them to agree to sell them their shares. Now, with that understanding, let's go over this. Let's get an understanding of the Paramount hostile takeover bid. And there's 5 main points that I want to cover here for us to understand about this bid. Point number 1, Paramount is offering shareholders $30 per share. That is in contrast to the winning bid that Netflix gave them of $27.75 per share that they offered. Now, you might think, okay, well then it's more. Maybe not, because this is the second most important thing to understand. Paramount's bid includes buying all of Warner Brothers, including the proposed spin-off TV division for things like CNN, TNT, all the television. Remember, Warner Brothers early this year announced that they were going to be splitting Warner Brothers in half. On one side would be Warner Brothers Studios and HBO Max. On the other side would be their television divisions that they would break into 2 separate companies. One would be Warner Brothers, one would be Discovery Global, I think it was going to be called. Netflix is only buying Warner Brothers Studios and HBO Max, and they're going to wait till almost a year, about 3/4 of a year, for Warner Brothers to finish spinning off the rest. And they're paying $27.75 per share just for Warner Brothers, not the TV division. Paramount is offering $30 for the whole package, the whole thing. So the $30 per share isn't actually as big of a bid as the $27.75 per share. Paramount is suggesting, and they've said this publicly, that the spun off new company, the TV division company, is only worth $1 per share. Warner Brothers maintains that it is worth at least $3 per share, which again adds to the mathematical conundrum. So the board of Warner Brothers would be saying $27.75 is actually the bigger bid because we are selling Warner Brothers, the studio, and HBO, and we are still, the shareholders are still going to have the value of the spun off TV division. That's how that gets a little bit confusing, but that's their point of view. It's like saying this, Rob. I'm going to sell you my phone, and I also have this remote control for sale. You bid $20 for the phone. Somebody else bids me $21 for both of them together, but I think the remote is worth more than $1. That's basically the situation here with the bids between Paramount and Netflix. All right, let's move on to the third main thing to understand about this proposed takeover. Paramount's David Ellison says that their last bid wasn't their last and final bid, despite the fact that Warner Brothers called for their best offers in the second round of bidding that Netflix ultimately won. David Ellison right now is crying in public saying, you know, I told David Zaslav that bid wasn't our last and final or best and final. We could have given a bigger bid, but Warner Brothers told everybody. Round one of bidding, submit in a bid, it's not binding. But then in round two of bidding, send us your best bid, because we're making our decision based on this bid. And Netflix had the better bid. My question would be,
well, usually though, then you say, does anybody want to better their offer?
But that's what round one was. They did that. They said round one, send us your offers, non-binding. And then then second round is now send us your real offers, because this one's got to count. And they let them know it was the final round. So my question to David Ellison and company would be, well, why didn't you just send in your best bid? You knew round two was the binding round. They said that publicly. Round two is the binding round. So why would you send in anything other than your best bid? If they end up losing this because of that,
they didn't send in a second bid though, did they?
Yes, they did.
Oh,
yeah.
they did send in a second bid. Oh.
Comcast, Paramount, and Netflix all did, and Netflix won. So my question would be to them, do you not know how this works? Like, if you can't cry that they didn't accept your bid when they told you to send us your binding bid, and they didn't do it anyway. Point 4 that we have to understand here is that David Ellison argued that Paramount's deal will have a shorter regulatory process given the company's smaller size and friendly relationship with the Trump administration. Now, again, I think it's pretty Bush League of them to basically they're saying the secret stuff out loud.
And not if you read his Truth Social posts last night, he doesn't. Yeah,
I know. But look, the reality is this. It all comes down to the courts. Like, it's the regulatory boards. They don't get to kill it. They can say, no, we have a problem with this, and we're going to take you to the trade board and court and charge you, and to try to get the courts to stop it. But then it's up to the courts. And regardless of who likes who, if Netflix and Warner Brothers present, hey, this is all legal, everything we're doing here is legal, it doesn't matter if a Democrat or a Republican White House likes or doesn't like the deal. If we are following the rules, you can't stop us. And certain places get in trouble when courts deem it to be violating the rules. But I don't think, as we said earlier in the show, I don't think Paramount would have too much trouble crossing those lines. I don't think Netflix is going to have too much trouble crossing those lines. But I will say this, literally speaking, when Ellison says he thinks the Paramount purchase process of Warner Brothers would be a little quicker and a little smoother, I don't think he's wrong. I don't think he's wrong when he says that. I think he is probably right. I think it will be a little quicker and a little smoother if it is Paramount, primarily because they're a smaller company. So I don't think he's wrong when he says that, although I think it's a pretty douchey thing to suggest that. Be a shame if your nice store here got all wrecked in the middle of the night if you didn't pay protection money. The fifth thing is this. If the Netflix offer gets stopped by the courts, Netflix is going to have to pay Warner Brothers a $5.8 billion breakup fee. Now, the binding offer that Netflix gave Warner Brothers is this. Hey, it's going to take us a year to make this deal. If at any point we walk away, we got to give you $5.8 billion for nothing.
Not a bad business.
But it also includes if this deal doesn't happen through nobody's fault. Because if the government does step in and then the courts step in and say, Netflix, you're not allowed to buy Warner Brothers, even though that's not Netflix's fault, they still got to cut a check for $5.8 billion to Warner Brothers for nothing. And then Warner Brothers can just go, okay, who else wants to bid? And they can just collect nearly $6 billion for free and walk away. And that's important. And, you know, I didn't put a 6 point on this graphic, and I really should have. The 6 point that I would probably want to make now in hindsight that we all need to keep and understand about this potential hostile takeover is the shareholders still have to approve it. We talked about this when Netflix won the bidding war. It's like, ultimately, David Zaslav won't decide. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, it's not even the Warner Brothers board that will decide. Ultimately, it's the Warner Brothers shareholders that finally have to vote and approve it. And at the end of the day, this hostile takeover is about David Ellison going directly to the shareholders and say, vote for mine. And it will be up to the shareholders. It's going to be up to them. Look, Rob, I told you this before we started the show today. I don't think this is going to amount to anything. I really don't.
Do you think Netflix is going to get it?
I think Netflix is going to get it. I don't think this I don't think this hostile takeover bid is going to amount to much. I know that David Ellison has not been, again, listen, I got to remind everybody that for months now, I've been very pro David Ellison and Skydance taking over Paramount. I've been very bullish on the potential of what they can do. I like his commitment to theatrical. I like his vision for a number of their movie franchises. I am still very bullish on the future of Paramount, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with Paramount. Okay? That is true. But what is also true is I don't think David Ellison has been conducting himself. Number one, we know that people at Paramount are straight up embarrassed by the way he's been representing the company. And number two is I don't think the way he's been acting lately is exactly endearing himself to the shareholders and the primary principals over at Warner Brothers or helping his cause. And I don't think it's a great look to saying, we lost, we're going to try to overwhelm this with force and get it. I don't think it's a good look. I ultimately don't think it'll go anywhere, but you know. Guys, we want to take a second to thank a sponsor of this video, Aura. Guys, if you are anything like me, you swear every year you're going to be on top of your Christmas shopping, and then suddenly it's December 20th, the shelves are empty, and you're standing around in Target asking yourself, does my aunt even like candles? But this year, I am not doing that because of Aura frames. It's completely saved me. See, I always struggled with what to get people in my life, but this year I'm going to give out a couple of Aura frames, and it's hands down the most personal, meaningful gift that I can possibly give. And here's the best part. Aura lets you upload unlimited photos and videos. Plus, the frame comes in a premium gift box with no price tag, so it feels like a classy, well thought out gift, even if you bought it last minute. Guys, you can't gift wrap togetherness, but you can frame it. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames named #1 by Wirecutter by using promo code CAMPEA at the checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code Campea. This deal is exclusive to our listeners and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in on time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning that we sent you at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Listen, Rob, if he comes back and says, F it, I think the Netflix deal is worth $82.7 billion. He may come as, F it, we'll just give you $200 billion. Well, then the shareholders are going to say yes.
Well, yeah.
But then,
then Paramount shareholders may say no, but.
Right. That's what I was getting at. At a certain point, he wants to talk about fiduciary responsibility. Well, then you're kind of blowing your proverbial load on this and then destroying your cash balance for Paramount.
And putting yourself in debt.
Yeah, huge
other
debt.
People who are helping to finance your bid.
While the company you just purchased, Paramount, needed to be supported and built up.
By the way, I was talking to somebody in the live chat before the show started, and they were it wasn't the live chat, it was on the chat board on the YouTube channel. Somebody said, why didn't Comcast get more serious about this and put in a bigger bid? And what I said to them was, listen, at some point, something you want costs too much for it to have value to you. There's an old saying in real estate when you're looking to buy a house, the right house for the wrong price is the wrong house. It's like, yeah, I love that house. $5 million. What? That house is not worth $5 million. So you may want the house. It might be a good looking house. You would love to have that house. But if the price is too high for what it's worth to you, you don't get it. I think the point here for Comcast was they wanted Warner Brothers. They did. But they wanted it for a price that made sense to them. And Netflix and Paramount both were willing to spend on it more than what Comcast ultimately felt it was worth it to them. And they backed out. Like, listen, I would have been very interested to see Comcast Universal getting it. But you know, the price tag got too high and they said not worth that much. And they backed out.
They're probably so happy right now.
Yeah, and they're probably very happy about it at this point. So anyway, these are the things to understand about what's going on here. Look, is it impossible that Paramount win this? No. At what they're going at the shareholders with at $30 per share, I don't think that'll cut it. But they come back to the shareholders again with $33, $34, $35 per share, which I don't think they will, because that's getting into some astronomical money.
Yep.
Here's what I think is going to happen, Rob. This is what I think is going to happen. I have nothing to back this up with. This is my pure speculation. Okay. Could be totally wrong. But what I suspect is going to happen here is this. David Ellison and Paramount are going to be taking a couple more swings to try to get Warner Brothers. And when they see it's not going to work, I believe they are going to quickly pivot to try to buy NBC Universal away from Comcast. Because remember, Rob, Comcast said publicly that their plan was to buy Warner Brothers, merge it with NBC Universal, and then spin that company off. Comcast may be in the market to divest themselves of NBC Universal as it is. So and David Ellison does not strike me as a patient man. So I don't think he's going to be willing to wait around for a year as the whole Netflix buying out Warner Brothers process plays out. I think he's going to take a couple of swings at trying to get Warner Brothers again. And when he sees that isn't working, I think they're going to quickly pivot to try to buy NBC Universal. Again, don't take that to the bank. I have nothing to base that on but my own speculation. But that's what I think is going to happen. Anyway, Rob, you saw the news here. Paramount and Ellison are not giving up on this thing. They want to take another run at it. What do you think about them doing this? What do you think their chances are of success? And what do you think happens ultimately?
Well, this is not my area of expertise, certainly. High finance, just look at me. Come on. But I would say that if I had my druthers, I'd like to see neither one of them get it and Warner Brothers to stay an independent entity, but that seems to be not the case. But I think ultimately that Netflix probably has an edge only because they're a stable company. Paramount is a fairly new, the Skydance Paramount entity is brand new. You know, how stable are they going to be in a year? You know, they still have to make great content to be a company that's viable. And they haven't proven themselves as an entity yet. And they're trying to go after this venerable studio. Well, Netflix is at the top. Netflix is at the highest level they can be. And if they buy Warner Brothers, they're going to be pushed even higher. They're going to have a catalog that won't quit. They're going to eventually get HBO. It might take a year or two or however long they're going to let HBO be HBO. And
it'll introduce them to the theatrical film market because now they'll have a theatrical
hopefully,
division.
Hopefully
so they say.
Yeah, and look, to be honest,
I don't like the comments about the shorter windows though.
Yeah, look, Netflix does not want to be in the theatrical business. They just don't. It's not part of their business plan. They are an analytics driven, they're a data driven company. They are not a movie studio. They might finance movies, but they're financing movies that are based on their analytics. So there's not anybody. They would never make one battle after another.
But again, if they do what they say, and hey, for the record, I am dubious about how much I trust them. I am.
Ted Sarandos does not have a good track record of playing straight and
or being honest.
Yeah.
But playing devil's advocate for a second, their claim is that they want to keep Warner Brothers intact and continuing to make theatrical movies and let them and their creative, that includes Pam Abdi, Michael DeLuca, James Gunn, to continue making the decisions, running theatrical, all that kind of stuff. Again, I am very dubious about his authenticity, but if he means what he says publicly, it allows Ted Sarandos to keep Netflix always what Netflix was.
Yep.
And allow Warner Brothers to be something that's different and maybe complementary to what they do with Netflix. Again, I'm playing devil's advocate here, but anyway, please.
I
continue.
think that's the smart play, but I think ultimately that their analytics-driven business model is going to eventually win out. And I think that the problem is that the theatrical marketplace is not stable. And Netflix and their viewership is. They know how many, they know what their subscription base is. They know how much money they're going to get. Whereas this theatrical marketplace is very volatile. And while we know that Warner Brothers, if they keep making hits, I mean, they made 4 horror films this year that collectively made over $1.2 billion. And that's money that Netflix never gets because they don't release their movies at all. So that would just be that if they made those movies, they would just absorb the cost, which is I think a little over $200 million for those 4 films. They would never get paid back, which I don't understand. I don't understand why they wouldn't want to get that $1.2 billion, get the marketplace understanding what those movies are, and then put them on their streaming platform. That, as we've talked about a million times, but then he would turn around and tell you, but how often does that happen? That 4 horror films each gross, hundreds of millions of dollars.
I mean, one of the things I mentioned I did a stream the other day, and one of the things that I mentioned is that look, rational human beings have beliefs. And then as new information becomes available, we alter our beliefs, right? That's what rational people do. I believe, while I have my own opinion about Ted Sarandos, I do believe he's a rational human being.
He's a businessman.
He's a businessman. And, I said this to our viewers before. I said, I absolutely can see a scenario here where he recognizes, like once they get Warner Brothers, keep them as a studio, he recognizes, holy crap, Warner Brothers made these movies for us. Let's say they already own them this year. But those 4 horror movies collectively made over $1 billion. They made us that money, and then we put them on Netflix. And because of their popularity in theaters, they blew up on Netflix, far bigger than they ever would have if we just made them and put them directly on Netflix.
I mean, Michael Bay's The Island is blowing up on Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing. I think what will happen here, because remember, Sarandos said when Warner Brothers, what did he say? When Warner Brothers first went on the market, said, we're not interested.
Yeah, we're not interested in legacy media.
Yeah, we're not interested. Guess what? Oh, yes, he was. He was very interested. And I think when Ted Sarandos and the board of Netflix, I think the reason they ended up putting in a an $82.7 billion bid, it wasn't just to get HBO Max's catalog. You're not spending 27 or $82 billion just for that. I think they recognized that they have an opportunity to have a very complementary business structure where we own one of the greatest historic movie studios of all time.
That's going to feed us.
That is going to give us a new element to our business, which is theatrical films. Netflix will stay purely non-theatrical, but Warner Brothers will be theatrical. And then that will feed hyper popular content into Netflix. And this will be a great symbiotic relationship. I choose to believe, that the logic of this and the businessness of this, because Rob, one of the things that I trust is people's greed. I've never gone wrong trusting in companies' greed. And I think from purely a standpoint of greed, I think ultimately Netflix is going to look at this deal and this potential relationship as something that can be very profitable for them if they handle it right. But we'll see if they actually do that.
And look, if they kept HBO around, they could do the same thing. They could say, okay, we're going to leave HBO intact, but their library, anything that's 10 years old or older, we're going to take off of HBO and put it onto Netflix. And we're going to allow, because that keeps HBO viable. And Netflix gets to mine. Like, I'd love to see Dream On, for instance, on Netflix.
God, I loved that show.
I love that show too. Brian Benben, come on. He was married to Madeline Stowe. He's my hero. I would love to see Dream On come back and go and be able to, and think about all the things that, that would mean Sex in the City would go. You could, I don't know what their business model is. I don't know what their plan is. It would be, Sopranos would go.
I think even Boardwalk, if you said 10, then Boardwalk would be over there too.
Yeah, 10, and I think that would be, because then you keep HBO intact to make these incredible shows, and then then ultimately, I mean, Harry Potter, that means stays on.
Right.
It stays on HBO.
Yeah, well,
you
I mean,
know?
they have said we plan on keeping HBO Max as a standalone independent
Yeah.
service, which surprised me. But they came out and just said, yeah, this is our plan for it. It's like, oh, okay. I guess there are other ways to do it, but
Well, because you
all right.
want HBO to continue HBOing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, the problem that Netflix, like we've said, there's not a lot. The movies that they've made, I think the series they've made are much better than the movies that they've made.
1,000%.
And I think that
1,000%.
they're in the TV business.
Yeah.
And I think licensing great movies is in their best
But
interest.
let's just call it what it. Netflix sucks at making original movies.
They do.
About
Because
1 out of every 100 they make is really, and they have a handful of really good ones. They absolutely do. The New Frankenstein, for example, excellent film.
yeah, and
But
so is
for every one
Pinocchio.
for every one Frankenstein though, there's 99 other pieces of garbage. They are the worst
Because
movie studio.
they're making money. They're making movies based on analytics and not on creativity.
That's why they want Michael
They're
Duluth and Pam
they're
Abdi.
like the TriStar of streaming.
I almost spit on my-
But that's not to say I wouldn't want to be in business with Netflix.
Oh, of course. I'll take their money.
I'd love to make shows for them. You know,
That's the thing. Why can Netflix be so good at making series? They're not as good as HBO, but how can Netflix be so good at making series and be so utterly terrible at making movies?
well, because they're hiring great showrunners. You know, they're bringing in showrunners to let them do what they want to do, and they're allowing, and also they acquire shows from all over the world too. Like, I never thought I would be watching a show about a French family that sells high-end real estate, but I do.
I still don't.
It's good. Don't watch it; you'll get sucked right in.
I highly doubt that. All right, guys, listen. Question is for you. What do you think about this? I hope we just ran down and gave you a clear understanding about this hostile takeover attempt from Paramount. I mean, could it work? It could, but I think the dollar values have to go much higher. But then if they do, Netflix has the option to give them a better offer. Look, I don't think it's going to amount to anything. I think this is ultimately going to turn out to have Paramount going after NBC Universal. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But how do you feel about this whole thing? Whatever your thoughts are, jump down into the comment section below and leave your thoughts there. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this video. Make sure you like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget, we have a daily podcast called the John Campea Show podcast, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting app of choice. Go and subscribe to it today so it'll be there when you need it.